welcome to the Spright Podcast, the official podcast of SpreadingLight.com. I'm Tim Yorty, and with me today is the founder of Spreading Light, Michael Stein.
Hi. This is completely new to me, so this is probably going to sound quite awkward during our first recording.
So why don't we go ahead and tell them a little bit about what Spright is and what we plan to do with this podcast. You want to go ahead?
Sure. Pretty much this is, like I said, a new thing, and you proposed this idea to me a few months ago, and it sounded interesting and didn't pursue it right away, but got to thinking more about it and thought of it as a new way to expand the ministry that I've been doing on Spreading Light for a number of years now, and thought, well,
what is Spreading Light? What is SpreadingLight.com for those not familiar with it?
SpreadingLight.com is a website that I have run for a number of years now. I think going back to 1999 is when I first started it. So we're actually starting our 15th year right this month, actually.
So you survived the .com crash of 2000, is what you're saying?
Yes, I did not go the way of pets.com.
Okay, well that's good. So, and how about a little bit about yourself? You're obviously the founder of Spreading Light, but who is Michael Stein?
Well, I am an ordained pastor with, I'm ordained through the United Brethren Church, but I'm actually working with the Brethren in Christ Church right now. I'm at a small church of about 25 people, so I'm doing that part-time pastoring, and that's really where my heart is, but part-time doesn't pay the bills, so I also run my websites online, and I'm also teaching through Grand Canyon University as an online professor.
That's all very interesting. And I am not a pastor. I work in retail management. I'm also a husband and father and a writer. I have one book published, and a musician sometimes when I am feeling productive. And that's who I am. I also run websites, none nearly as successful as Mike's, but I will catch up someday, I'm sure.
Oh, we can always hope.
Yes, my bank account can too.
And of course, we've known each other for quite a number of years, probably going on 15 years, I believe.
Just about as long as Spreading Light has been around.
Yeah, I was just thinking that I moved to Lancaster in 1999, so that's pretty much when we would have met, I guess.
Yes, when you were assisting with the youth group at a Grace Brethren Church in Palmyra, Pennsylvania, and I was one of the young lads in the youth group at the time.
Young lads, yes. Probably one that gave me the most trouble, right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I don't think I ever toilet papered your house or egged anything of yours.
No, because I was still in the dorm at the time.
Oh, that's right.
You were just one of those troubled young lads with relationship troubles, which we won't get into today.
Yeah, that's gonna be like a 4-part series. How not to date and be a part of the youth group.
Yeah.
Perhaps we can have a special guest speaker that day.
Instructional videos.
No, I will not participate in that. Yes, we will have a guest speaker for that 4-part series. To get the other side of their perspective. I'm sure she'd love to be a part of it. Haven't seen her in probably 12 years, and that's probably for the best.
Probably. We can say you are happily married, as am I.
Yes, I have 2 children, and they are lots of fun.
And I have lots of animals.
Yes, which I have no desire to have any of. But there is a cat in my house. That's all right. I can deal with a cat.
Yeah. I have 2 dogs and 3 cats, and right now I am locked in a back room away from all of them because they all tend to make noise.
Yeah, we don't need that. You can add some sound effects in at some other point in time. So.
I suppose I should ask you, what led you to think about doing a podcast? What's your motivation on this?
Well, it's been something that's been on my mind off and on for years now, and it was a matter of needing to find a subject matter that would, uh, you know, that I would be interested in, and one that I could do for the long term. And church related issues that like the ones that we are going to be discussing in future episodes of the Spright podcast, it's something that interests me a lot, and I think you and I have some differing perspectives, and we certainly have some different background on the thing. So that doing that sort of podcast, it's not really one that I had thought of doing for myself necessarily, but when we started discussing doing it together, it made a lot of sense to me, and I think doing something together like we are is going to help spur the conversation and like I said, give some different perspectives. Because we do come from different backgrounds. Like you said, you're a pastor. I am certainly not. I have not. I've considered it. I don't know if you know that. I had considered becoming a pastor at various times in my life. And
No, I don't think I knew that. I know I went to school with your brother.
yes, and he went to school for pastoral studies and never became a pastor. But
As did a lot of my other college friends.
yeah, I think there was
Have-
there was times through growing up and through my 20s and things that when I considered you know, becoming a pastor, those very brief periods, I thought, well, I can sometimes get these interesting insights out of the scriptures, and maybe I have something to offer. But I'm like, I'd be like a 30-second commercial in as far as giving sermons. I'd get straight to the point, and then people would be wondering what they're supposed to do with the next 45 minutes that should be filled with a sermon. So ultimately, I realized that was not a path that I should possibly take.
Yeah, I can see that there can be a career built around that. I certainly know pastors that speak very briefly, and the people are left going, okay, okay, time for more singing, I guess.
Well, yeah, that's when you just do, about 5 more songs with some lighting effects and fog machines, maybe. That usually fills up a good half hour.
That's certainly not my goal. I believe in God's word first and foremost. I love preaching, and my spiritual mentor, he would preach 45 minutes. Now I don't go that long. I don't have the attention span to go that long, I think, and I know a lot of people just can't sit there that long, even if their mind can go that long. If they're in their 70s or 80s, they can't sit.
Yeah. Why don't we talk about some of the subjects that we're going to be going into on the Sprighting Light podcast, or Spright as we're calling it, going forward. Do you have the list in front of you?
I can bring it up. That's one of the marvels of the internet and being in front of my computer at all times. I know we tossed around a number of different ideas already, and I started with a list of, I think it was 8 different topics. It's a kind of a series that I've worked with before. It's based on a survey. It's called Natural Church Development, and it's a survey that churches can do that basically assesses their health.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and I don't know how many. I think it's 10,000 churches they've done this with, and these 8 different areas they found if they scored a certain number on all of them, that almost universally those churches were growing.
So, have you scored your church?
I have not done the church I'm at right now because you need 30 people to get an accurate result, and I don't have that many.
For you, I see.
Yes, but I actually did do it at my home church a number of years ago. I wasn't the pastor at the time, but I participated with it and sat on the board at the time when we were doing it, so I did get to discuss it. The 8 areas that it looks at are empowering leadership, gift-based ministry, passionate spirituality, effective structures, inspiring worship, holistic small groups, need-oriented evangelism, and loving relationships. And obviously, when we get into discussing them, I'll do my best to explain what all those actually mean. One of the things that has routinely come out of these surveys is just about every church says, "Oh yeah, we're a loving church," and they do this survey and they discover, yeah, you say you're a loving church. Well, you're a loving church to the 12 people that you sit next to in the pews, and you have no interaction with anybody else.
That's an interesting perspective. Yeah, I was just reading something today from Michael Moore, who is certainly not a very religious person, not somebody that I think you and I would agree with on very many things. But what he was writing about was people who talk about supporting the troops, and it was kind of a very scathing and cynical letter that he put together. That, you know, in reality, other than saying it, no one really does support the troops in any sort of meaningful way. And I think what you were just talking about in the church, it's a tough lesson to think about, that we're not who we say we are as far as being Christians, being Christ-like, and, you know, reaching out to people beyond our small circle of friends.
Yeah, definitely, and that's one of the things that is reflected in this survey. One of the questions I remember to ask is, how many people from church have you had invited to your house in the last 6 months or something like that? And, you know, routinely people were like, "Oh, I'm supposed to do that?" Well, that's one of the things that it counts it as loving relationships.
I can remember growing up, you know, my parents would occasionally invite some people over to our house from the church, and it you know, maybe was you know, a small circle of friends. I can't remember the exact people sometimes, but I can remember it wasn't nearly as often that we were invited elsewhere, and I think some people, you know, some people are the invited and some are the invitees, but I think some people, you know, it's just not part of their thought process to have that sort of fellowship in their home.
Yeah, and I mean, we can say some things are cultural, things have changed, and certainly, you know, I would never consider going door to door today. It's too scary, you don't know. And I'm not talking about being afraid the way we think of fear, just kind of, I would just never do it today. It's a different society.
You're not endorsing the Mormons' methods or the Jehovah's Witnesses' methods?
No.
No, I for some reason I thought you were into that. Yeah, well, I think the effectiveness of that, aside from the fact that there's a lot of, you know, people with very anti-Christian view, or really bad view of Christians that's been built up by society, and going to their door and basically telling them everything that they've heard all their lives over TV and radio and whatever, that they've rejected all those instances, but suddenly you're standing there in their front door and they're supposed to accept it because you showed up at their front door. I'm not sure that that's very effective anymore.
Yeah, certainly. That's something I'm sure we'll get into discussing more. Some of the other topics that we had talked about doing aside from that series is Christian commercialism, Christian merchandise. Those are things that I know years ago we talked about, and sometimes openly mocked, I will say.
What, you don't have a case of Testaments in your house? I'm sucking on one right now.
Oh, I'm certain, yeah. And I worked at a Christian bookstore, so I certainly have a different view on some of those things as well. We have a podcast we hope to do on how much should Christians be involved in politics. How big is too big for a church? You know, is there such a thing? We have churches that are in the tens of thousands in the United States here. We've talked about discussing our favorite worship songs for our podcast. Talked about should Christians fight in wars. One of these here, I'm looking at the list. I must have written down dinosaurs, Bigfoot, and the supernatural. That sounds like something the way I would write it.
Yeah, I don't think I put that in there. I look forward to that one, though. As you've been reading the list, I having to bite my tongue a little bit of offering some opinions on them. I'll save them for when we get to those podcasts.
Yes, you and your
As you know, I'm very opinionated on some of these things.
yeah, you and your 30-second get to the point. You can't just answer the question when I throw them out.
You know, that's how I got through some of my schoolwork when I was in high school. I had a report. It had to be a certain number of pages. I forget how many, but I didn't have that much content. And so at the end of the report, I wrote, I think it was supposed to be 5 pages, and I wrote, if someone needs 5 pages to make their point, then they probably didn't have much point to begin with. And that's how I ended my report. I think I got a B on it. I was 3 pages long.
Good enough then.
Yeah. I actually had one time that I put pictures into to take up space.
Oh, that's classic.
Yeah.
We'd also discussed about doing like a monthly media podcast, as I have it recorded here, pretty much discussing what's going on in the world, and maybe even what's coming out as far as books, movies, CDs. I guess people still buy CDs anymore.
MP3s, yes. Get with the times there, Mike.
Now I'm starting to feel old.
As you should.
Those are some of the things that we've already discussed and have written down that we would like to do as podcasts, and I'm certain that we're going to have more ideas as things go on, and hopefully we'll even get some feedback from listeners that they will tell us, positive feedback, please, listeners. They will tell us what they would like to hear us discuss as well.
And what's the direct web address to the Spright podcast?
The podcast website will be at spreadinglight.com/podcast.
Simple enough.
So that should be simple enough, yes. And right now that site is not live, but once this podcast goes up, that site or that section will be live, and viewers, listeners can get on there and listen to this one as well as any future ones and past ones.
And shortly after that, we will have it available in iTunes to subscribe to, and I believe we're also planning on doing video versions of it, not with us, you don't want to see us, but with the audio recording available through YouTube. So whatever device you're using, whatever computer, whatever, you will be able to listen to Spright and hear our melodious voices whenever you desire.
Yes, and hopefully we should mention that this being our first time really recording things, we might have to do some adjusting on the recording levels and things like that. If our voices sound weird right now, this is probably not what we actually sound like in real life, but we'll blame it on the recording.
My voice normally sounds like this, and that's how I talk every day. I'm very hard to talk to in real life.
Like Arnold Schwarzenegger without quite as strong of an accent.
I think we might have to edit that out, too.
Probably.
All right, I think that just about wraps it up for the first ever Spright podcast, the official podcast of spreadinglight.com. Anything else you want to add, Mike?
Check us out online.
I think that's a given, but all right, we'll see you later.
All right, thank you.